We have an important moment right now to advance dialogue and action surrounding racial equity around the world. That starts within each of us as individuals, and it starts at places like Google. Google's values are based on three respects. First, we respect all of our users because a problem is never solved if it's only solved for some. Second, we respect the opportunity. Working at Google comes with the responsibility to do the right thing and to accomplish things that matter. And third, we respect each other. We co-create a culture where everyone belongs. These values are the foundation for our concrete commitments to racial equity, building sustainable equity within Google, building products that, for example, help Black users, investing in economic opportunities for Black business owners and entrepreneurs, closing gaps in STEM education, supporting racial justice organizations, and more. This series is a forum to empower all of us to do even more. We'll explore topics and issues surrounding racial equity in its many forms with some of the world's leading voices in this space. Our goal is to amplify those voices and come together as a global community to make real change. Thank you for joining us as we search for racial equity.
Bubba Wallace asks for a ban on Confederate flags in NASCAR events. The President of the United States puts out a tweet to Bubba Wallace asking an apology.
Flag had not been banned.
We saw a host.
Bubba, will you apologize?
They're running you loose in about 3 and 4. You're losing your momentum. I need you to stay high.
Being the face of the Black Lives Matter movement for NASCAR, does it feel like...
What do you think about the Confederate flag in the NASCAR? Is there really a problem with
And in
racism
tonight's
in
news,
America?
Bubba Wallace asked for a ban.
Bubba Wallace's car has Black Lives Matter painted across the hood and one. A lot of people in the media made an apology.
How do you respond to the request that you apologize?
Hello, everyone. My name is Charisse Torres. I'm the Global Director of Inclusion at Google, and I'd like to welcome you to our next episode of Talks at Google, The Search for Racial Equity. Today, I am really excited to introduce our speaker, Bubba Wallace. Bubba is a professional race car driver wrapping up his third season driving the iconic number 43 Chevrolet for Richard Petty Motorsports. As the first full-time African-American driver in the NASCAR Cup Series since 1971, Bubba Wallace is known for breaking down barriers, but his impact goes far beyond the racetrack. Earlier this year, he used his platform to support Black Lives Matter and successfully challenged NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag from its tracks, earning him a reputation as a leader in the fight for racial justice. Bubba, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit in our intro, but just so the entire world knows how much of a gearhead I am, my husband and father were diehard gearheads. And honestly, I think one of the reasons that my husband decided I was the one was my uncanny ability to identify American muscle from European speed just by the sound of the engine. So awesome. Tell us a bit about your journey to NASCAR. Have you always been a car guy? Has it always been about racing for you?
Yeah, I think ever since I was 9 years old when I started out in go-karts, and it kind of just followed the path, which I didn't really know what was certain. But we were just about every 2 years, my dad was like, "Hey, let's get this bigger and faster car to race." And I'm like, "Okay." So we went from go-karts to Bandoleros to legend cars, and got into a full-size stock car, late model stock car, when I was 13, 14. And so getting to muscle around 400 horsepower was a lot of fun, and it was challenging, but you also learned every step of the way. So, finally breaking into the NASCAR ranks when I was 18, which was, in the Canaan Pro Series East at that time. And it's been really cool to look back on the journey and see, all the kind of avenues that we had ventured upon, and how one door opened and one door closed, and now here we are.
Yeah. So as much as I want my son to watch this, something tells me I might get a little pushback at not letting him drive the Volkswagen, given you were taking around 400 horsepower at his age.
Oh,
so
yeah.
maybe I'll just edit that part at the end of the day when I'm watching it at home. So moving now to kind of the moment that we're in. So many of us, when it comes to a time of unrest and uncertainty between COVID, the growing movement for racial equity, forest fires in my home state of California and across the West Coast, so many of us are feeling a deep sense of anxiety and almost a feeling like one small mistake could cause a disaster. And when I think about any given NASCAR race, I think you're really well aware that your job is a metaphor for this. So how do you prepare yourself for a race? What tactics are you using to get into the zone when there's so much going on around you?
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's, now with the schedule the way it is now because of COVID, it actually takes a lot of the stress away.
Oh, really?
Because we're mainly flying in the day of. It takes the stress away, but it adds the stress because we have no practice, we have no qualifying. The moments we get on, the first laps we get on the track is when the green flag drops for the race. So no mistakes, or that's it. Your weekend's over with. So there's been a lot of guys where they've traveled across the country or whatever it may be, and have wrecked on lap one. And so there's that stress, but there's also, usually our schedules are from, flying out Thursday, coming home late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And that's kind of our schedule for 36 weeks. And so with COVID now, with it being just a one-day show, we usually just travel out either Saturday night or Sunday morning to go to the race. So there's that kind of stress taken away from that. So for me, it's been kind of like a smooth sail for the most part. It's easy for me to compartmentalize what's going on and kind of focus on the task at hand and shift my mind. Like right now I'm focused on talking to you, having this great conversation, and then it'll switch over to race mode shortly after this and start to prep yourself. And so it'll be exciting to see what goes on this weekend.
Yeah. So it sounds like being present, really being present to whatever it is you're involved in is core to how you stay grounded.
Absolutely. In the moment. That's how I like to roll.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of staying present, you have been open over the past year about mental health and the importance of mental health and challenges that you've had with depression. What led you to open up about that? And before you answer, I'll just say that, I don't know about your family, but growing up for me, talking about therapy, talking about depression or anxiety, it's not just something that Black folks did, right? You either prayed it away or you realized that you didn't have it as hard as others, so you kind of suck it up. I think anyone, particularly people of color, speaking up about therapy, speaking up about depression or anxiety, it's an act of bravery. It's an act of leadership, and something that I try to actively model in my circle. So what drove you to open up?
Yeah, I think, if you ask me what's going on, I'm going to tell you. I'll give you a full rundown of my day. And that's just kind of how it kind of went about. I was in media availability at Kansas Speedway last year. And I had a lot going on behind the scenes personally, a lot of on-track stuff that, the success wasn't there, the performance wasn't there, and just kind of put you in a dark place. Yeah. And a reporter had asked me, how's Bubba Wallace doing? And just, that was it. It just broke. And I was like, hey, I've been depressed for a really long time. And, it doesn't matter what you do for a profession, how much money you make, what you look like, what you smell like. It doesn't matter. Depression is real, and it latches on in so many ways. I still battle it to an extent. I'm a lot better than I was. I will say that proudly. But still I have days where nothing is exciting. The most exciting thing to do is sleep. And now that's kind of every day for me. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
I like sleeping.
my children once wrote in a school report, "What are mommy's hobbies?" And they said sleeping. So I'm right there with you.
But there's just some days where, you can get 15 hours of sleep and you wake up and it's just like
Still exhausted.
just this exhausted. And so there's a lot of stress, a lot of depression. And a part of me, I kind of bring it upon myself because I'm not the one, like you say, you got to pry it out of you. I'm a person that holds it in, that'll eventually let it boil over. And so I didn't get it out, and it finally built up enough to where I had to blow a gasket.
Yeah. So thank you for letting us know about that. Thank you for your vulnerability there. Something that I've always found leads to bouts of depression, or for me, what quite frankly, it's more anxiety, is this feeling of unworthiness, this feeling of not enough. And in an interview, when you talked about that, you said your mom had asked you to start journaling again. And you wrote some, tell us a bit about that story, because you kind of made a note to yourself and checked 2 boxes. Tell us what happened there.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and read it, but it was, right on the lines of that, of, am I good enough? I'll never be good enough. This was, speaking more on track stuff of just, why can't we be competitive when there's so many, variables that go into a NASCAR team and being competitive and not being competitive. So, and so you start to doubt yourself. Self-doubt comes in when things aren't going right and you think that it's all on you. Well, some of it may be on you for sure. I gladly accept that with open arms, but not all of it. And that's the hard thing. It's just like, we're so tough and strong. We think that we can fix all the problems. And then when you can't, then that's when you start to self-doubt everything.
I think that goes back to something we talk a lot about in the tech industry around imposter syndrome. When you're surrounded by the best of the best, whether it be in tech, whether it be at NASCAR, you can often, let me speak for myself, I can often say, do I really deserve to be here? Am I worthy of this opportunity? And it sounds like these are things that went around for you as well.
For sure.
And I think, and something that I don't know if this was the case for you, but I think imposter syndrome can also come into play when you're one of the few or the only people who look like you in a profession. So, for example, throughout college and throughout my entire professional career, I've been the few or only Black person at my level for the past 30 years. So being the only Black NASCAR driver on the Cup Series since 1971, right? Since before both of us were born, that can be equal parts honor and a challenge. How, or not how, but do you feel a burden of being the only at this time?
I wouldn't call it a burden. That goes back to we were talking, I don't really see color and coming into it, I never really have. I never looked at why isn't there people that look like me? And I just, hey, this is something that I seem pretty good at that I'm going to kind of follow and pursue. And, if people of color want to join in, great. If they don't, then all right. That was before. And then now it's like, we need more people of color to join in this sport and starting to pay attention to those things more. And I still don't see color, from my side of things, but, being more diverse, especially now is super important. And just, I think the way the nation is transitioning, as much division that there is going on, as much hate that's being thrown around, having some unity and some diverse leadership, could really make a positive impact.
Yeah. So you talked about not seeing color and really not previously feeling the need to speak up about issues of diversity or racial equity. And in an interview, your mom said that she was a bit shocked or surprised that you started speaking out on race. Yeah. What was the moment that changed this for you?
Yeah, I think the Ahmaud Arbery video, I can still vision everything that goes on in that video to this moment. And that really sparked something. Didn't really know what it was until maybe the George Floyd incident that we had seen, and the power of social media and camera phones now is just unreal. And so you can't get away from anything. As much as you didn't want to see that, it's just on repeat. And those incidents really kind of was like the final straw that broke the camel's back. And also a lot of it was from pressure from fans, and people that knew that I was an African American driver in a predominantly white sport. You know, I got a lot of tweets. What does Bubba Wallace think? Is he going to say anything? This would be huge for Bubba Wallace to step up and be a leader in this. And you know, I've gotten those tweets when other tragic events have happened in years past, and it was just like it's such a tough way to navigate through sponsors, teams. Like, you got to be careful. You say one wrong thing and your career could be over with. And that's crazy how that is, but that's just how it works. And so, you know, this point, I was like, you know what? You know, sponsors can sit on the sideline. Teams can sit on the sideline. I'm going to, you know, speak my mind here. And that was that.
Yeah. So speaking of social media, I've spent a lot of time on your social media feed as a fan. Well, yes. Oh boy, as a fan and preparing for our conversation today. And I really love the hope that you bring to the medium and your willingness to take a stand on issues from Black Lives Matter to racial equity and really speaking for hope and love. But when you read through the comments, you tell a bit of a different story. There's you know, quite frankly, a lot of hate on your feed in response to your statements of love and hope. How do you deal with this response?
Yeah, well, I had a new partner come on board, Columbia Sportswear, huge brand, global brand, and we were having a talk with their management team, and that question had popped up, and my simplest answer was, well, if you have a company wanting to spend X million amount of dollars, you learn to keep your mouth shut. and that's the biggest thing. And so knowing that my words carry so much more than Joe Schmo's words that are spewing hate on my comments, you know, he could say the most negative, derogatory thing, and I could say one thing back, and all of a sudden I'm the bad person.
Yeah.
And so I've made those mistakes in the past, you know, before where I was at now. You know, learning and coming up through the ranks, you know, you fire back. Someone, you know, offended you. You wanted to stand your ground and stick up for yourself, but there's a way to do that, and you have to do that the right way, and you know, the right place, right time. It's one of those deals, and so it's just better for me to not say anything at all.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, I think, that you've spoken out about how initially you weren't bothered by the Confederate flag, but you took time to listen and educate yourself, and your views changed about that. It may be the same answer around the Ahmaud Arbery video going viral, and then George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, amongst so many others. What changed for you specifically around your stance on the appropriateness of the Confederate flag at NASCAR events?
Yeah, I think, you know, even the flag to this day doesn't, you know, strike a nerve and offend me. You know, for me, knowing, I mean, my position in this sport, knowing how much my words kind of carried weight, how much weight they carried, you know, and seeing the comments of, oh, NASCAR, they're not a welcoming sport. They're not a diverse sport. They have the Confederate flag flying. I've been to a race there. I didn't feel comfortable seeing that flag flown around. I'll never go to a race because the Confederate flag is there. You know, reading all those comments, it was just like, okay, if I can get rid of the flag, then that'll get more people to come. If I can speak about the flag and raise awareness on it, then that will, you know, kind of open up new doors. We're not shutting the door. Good friend Marty Smith said that. We're not shutting the door on those people that have the Confederate flag in their livelihood. Have at it. But when it's on private grounds and NASCAR is there that weekend, then we're not going to allow it. We're going to have all walks of life feel welcome. And while it may mean heritage to some, to a whole other demographic means hate. And it's like, why don't you have an understanding for that instead of being offended that we removed the Confederate flag? Like, I didn't go to your house and rip it off your walls or your flagpole. Like, it's just at the racetrack. That's it. You know, as soon as you leave the racetrack, you can do whatever you want. But you know, that's in your own private setting, as to where when you step on the grounds of a NASCAR race, then, you know, we kind of own you for that time being.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really, really great way to look at. It's about perspectives. And if it's
It is.
about putting on a great show for the fans, giving them a great experience, whereas before COVID, this was a 3-4 day experience
Yeah,
for most fans, just,
for sure.
camping out in campers or just being around for qualifying and all the experience. How can you expand the market to make sure that not only is everyone comfortable when they're there, but now more fans who may not have considered going in person are comfortable? I think that's a really great viewpoint, and just understanding that people view it differently. It's not a judgment. It's just, how do we make this the most welcoming site for all of our fans?
For sure.
Related to that, you've been really open about encouraging your fans to use love to defeat hate. What advice do you have for those moments? And really, I think the moment we're in right now is indicative of that. What advice do you give when that's easier said than done?
Yeah, I think everything's easier said than done, for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think you look at its levels, and everybody, I say that to a lot of things. There's levels to it. There's levels to racing. There's levels to society. You look at, what level do you want to be on? And do you want to stoop down to the level and continue to create more anger, frustration, and hate towards one another? Or do you just want to be the better person, be the bigger man, and just, you know what, just put your pride aside and just, you know, have an understanding for somebody, you know, no matter if they are continuing to spew hate, just kill them with kindness. That's you know, definitely one thing that, you know, I was taught growing up is kill them with kindness. So whether it's sarcastic or not, you know, it's, you're taking the higher road. You're starting to show that, you know, you can take the high road and be the better person. So I think at the same time, you're having an understanding of what's going on. You're realizing, like, okay, this conversation isn't going anywhere. So let's flip the script and try to be more constructive with our words and how we're going about things. And that's super important. So I think we all got a good view of not understanding one another last night on the TV screen with the debate. And it was just words just being thrown at each other. And, you know, one thing that us NASCAR drivers and a lot of people that have stepped up to be more outspoken have said is to take a step back and listen and educate yourself and learn, you know, what people are saying. And so I think that's really important. Yeah. And related to that, you know, you talk about encouraging people to take the high road and do their part to change the narrative, change the conversation by listening and trying to understand. So with that in mind, right now, racial justice is really top of mind for many people in America and around the world. How do you think we can take this moment and translate it into change? And what role? Some people might say, well, I'm just one person. I'm not an expert in this space, or I just have a regular day job. What could I really do to make a difference? What do you think that individuals, everyday people, can do to keep the momentum building on this quest for racial equity? Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I have those questions as well. It's like, okay, how can we create real change? I mean, go look at my comments. Like you said, there's a lot of work to be done. And so do I have the answer for that? No, but I think the more learning and listening and educating myself, you know, that answer might start to become more clear. And then you have those conversations with your peers to go out and educate them. And then hopefully it becomes a snowball effect to where they're doing, you know, they're preaching to the choir. They're sharing the gospel of what's going on and how we can make this world a better place. And you know, sharing my instances where I've gone through racial discrimination and educating people. And it's like, you know, not every day am I discriminated against. No, I mean, a lot of times, hey, Bubba, what's going on? How you doing? But there have been those times where it's like, it's the questions, it's how they word things, like being pulled over by police officers. You know, can you afford this car? Are you asking that question? Like, you know, was I speeding or not? Well, no, but you didn't turn on your turn signal right away. Like, but you want to know if I can afford this car. So it's those little things, and it's like, you know, why are those? Why does that even come to mind for some people? And some people just don't, like, oh, I wasn't trying to be rude there, but you knew what you were doing. So it's kind of having a better understanding.
In our search for racial equity and justice, one common theme has really stood out in all of our conversations, and that theme is hope. In the current global conversation on racial justice, how do you see love, courage, and hope as part of the conversation?
Yeah, I think, you know, having love towards one another is super important. Loving your brothers and sisters, your neighbors, you know, as they're your own family is super important. And that's how I was kind of brought up. You know, I was never taught to hate another person because of their beliefs or the way they looked. You know, it's, to me, I can, you know, and within a couple seconds, couple minutes of meeting you, I can figure out, hey, we're going to get along or we're not. And just because I think we don't get along, it doesn't mean I hate you. It's just like, you know, we're not vibing, and that's okay. And so I think just having an understanding for people, and not seeing them as something that's, you know, exposable. You know, we're in this together. And once you realize that when you're together, you're stronger, it makes so much more sense to treat each other with respect. And so, you know, it takes a lot of courage to do that, because, you know, it's tough. A lot of people can meet strangers. I really don't feel like I can meet a stranger. I make friends with a brick wall, and we hit it off really well. So I think I get that from my mother. But, you know, I think that having the love, the hope, the compassion there is super important. And I think if more people educate themselves on those three terms, it might, you know, expedite the process.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I'm going to ask a selfish question.
Okay.
If you were speaking to young boys or young girls around interest in pursuing a career in NASCAR, whether they are as young as you were when they began, or if they're a little older, say hypothetically 11 and 13 years old, like my boys happen to be, what advice would you give?
Yeah, this sport is super tough. This is a how do you word it? Like a solo sport.
Yeah.
Other sports are team sports. So, you know, you do your job, and as long as you execute it properly, then that's it. Well, when it comes to motorsports, it's a team. There's definitely a team. But you're controlling the ship. You're driving the car. You're, you know, doing everything on the track to get the best results as possible. So, you know, when you don't produce results, and say you finish second or third and you don't win time after time, then it's tough. So you have to be able to accept defeat. This is motorsports is the only form of sports where the champion loses more than he wins.
Yeah. And
so look at Kevin Harvick right now. He's won 9 races, and I think we're on 9 of 30. And you just, you know, the numbers there, it's like terrible. Then you fast forward to the Lakers and the Heat. I don't know their exact record right now, but I'm sure it's more wins than losses. And so it's levels to that. And so you have to look at, okay, I have to be able to accept defeat, but you learn from those moments of defeat and come back stronger for the next weekend.
Okay, so Bubba, it's really been a privilege to speak with you today. We've covered a lot of ground, lots of topics. Is there one message that you'd like our audience and your fans to walk away with from our conversation today?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've covered a lot, and it was really good talking to you as well. And I think, you know, having the understanding for one another, taking a step back and having patience. I think that's the word that we utilize so much in racing, having patience. But having patience with one another in society is super important. You know, give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't judge a book by its cover. You never know, you know, what that person is going through on the inside. I mean, people could say I live a lavish life and I got the best of the best, but I go through depression, and that's tough. And people don't know that. And so that's where just take a step back, listen for a second, educate yourself, and then make up your thoughts, if I should say. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way for us to end. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for leading with love and for guiding your fans to do the same. And best luck on the truck on Sunday.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
I'm Melanie Parker. Thank you for joining us for the search for racial equity.